So what you just saw is what we call feeding. Now keep in mind that feeding is not exclusive to Balintawak. This is not something that we only practice in Balintawak. This is something that is used in Filipino martial arts in general. This is a training tool. Now, in this case, one person, as you saw, acts as the feeder, meaning this is the person who is throwing the attacks, and the person who is blocking and countering, in the case that I just showed you, is the receiver. In this case, basically, this is not a fight. I just wanted to clarify that this is not a sparring either. This is just a training tool. This is similar to what you would see in boxing and kickboxing as your pad work, your traditional pad work, in which a person is going to put a pad in a particular position so you recognize, oh, there's my jab, or there's an opportunity for my cross, or there's an opportunity for my hook, or an opportunity for an uppercut. So it's a training tool.
Down, down now, 6 down, 4, 1, 2, 3, boom. That's it. Now combine it.
Now keep in mind that the idea behind this is to start with a predictable attack. In this case, I'm going to attack the person in a predictable manner. Basically is just to teach the other person how to recognize first the attacks and how to block, in this case, and countering, and to make them really good at that. And then progressively, we're going to start becoming a little bit more random with our attacks. So it's not going to follow the same logic 1, 2, 3 through 12. It's going to be maybe 1 and then 5 and then 6, etc. And then later on, we're going to add different case scenarios. Like, what if I trap you? What if I interrupt you? What if I thrust you and quickly thrust towards the other side? What if I change my mind and I quickly go from one side to the other side? What if I use my puño against the other person's face? Or what if I lay on top and I can use my fist? All of these are case scenarios that we're going to have later on. From the receiver's perspective, what we're doing is basically getting better reflexes and also diminishing the reaction time, meaning making it as quickly as possible. So the other person can not only recognize the elements much quicker, but can react to them much, much easier. From the feeder's perspective, what we're doing is basically working in our creativity. So not only we're thinking about the attack that we're doing, but we're thinking and seeing what are the next opportunities. Can I thrust in this case? Can I see that the person is leaving one side open, and then I can manipulate maybe the hand so I can attack that other side. So basically, as you can see, one side is focusing on reacting quickly. The other person is actually thinking also about reacting quickly against the counters of the other person, but it's also looking for new opportunities of attack. Now, as the speed increases, the thing is that we both, the feeder and the receiver, are also going to develop better timing. Obviously, we're going to try to react as quickly as possible, but also we have faster processing of information. So basically, we're going to not only recognize what the attack is coming from, the angle, the different types of positions of the stick, but also we will be able to react to this specific type of attacks much, much, much quicker. So, of course, when we practice martial arts in general, combat sports, the first thing that comes to mind is the risk of injury, which is the thing that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. Now, keep in mind that although that does exist and it's an important thing that we should also be aware of, we're trying to minimize the unnecessary strikes to the body in general, and then definitely the unnecessary strikes to the head. Because one of the things is that injuries not only can slow your progress, for sure, because if you get injured, you are going to spend a lot of time outside of the dojo. You won't be able to train, and obviously you're not going to progress as much, but also can actually have a bigger impact in your life. Imagine just a simple injury in your fingers, and if you are typing in your computer every single day, that's what you do for a living, that is going to have a tremendous impact on your life. Or if you get injured on your knee, you tear your ACL, imagine how that's going to affect your ability to walk or to just run or to do anything that you need to do. Now, this is particularly true when it comes to repeated strikes to the head, which is one of the main things that we have to avoid. Now, repeated strikes to the head have been associated to memory loss, emotional dysregulation, people are a little more reactive against minor things, and then reduced focus and attention, which is one of the main concerns that we have.
Back, boom, back.
Now, Balintawak definitely emphasizes power, as we were looking at, particularly through their mechanics, and we are thinking about speed as well. But we have another element that we always say is power, speed, and then the next one is going to be control. And that is an important thing. Control is built into it. It's not only a thing that we say, control is there every single time. The way that we train, it shows control. These allows you to create that sense of urgency, which allows you again to react under pressure, but without sacrificing your brain against unnecessary strikes to the head. In this case, what that allows you is to train continuously because you don't have to take so much time away from your training. And because of that, you're going to improve more steadily. So then there's the working memory aspect, which is your capacity or the capacity of your brain to hold different inputs at once and try to manipulate that information. So that's what the working memory is. Like imagine I'm giving you a set of numbers and they're random numbers and I ask you to tell me a story, and after a couple of minutes I ask you for those numbers. Again, that capacity to retain that information and manipulate that information and then giving me new information is a working memory. Now, keep in mind that when we are training, we are trying to store information at the same time that we're trying to pay attention to new information. So think about, for example, when I'm showing you a technique, right? Like a couple of minutes ago, so showing you a couple of things, you have to think about the sequences. You have to think about the directions of the strikes. You have to think about the hand position. So you have to think about the footwork. Everything that you have to think about, you have to think on top of that of trying to pay attention to the new information. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that you have to not only hold into your brain, but also manipulate at once. Now, through consistent training, as you can see, you've seen this gentleman right here. You have even people in the 60s and then 70s that can actually not only retain that amount of information, but you increase the ability to retain information, recall multiple steps at once, and trying to incorporate that into the new practice. Circle and center. Now, I personally like to use neuroscience, and I incorporate some of the neuroscience of learning to, when I teach, make the teaching a little bit more palatable, but also to make it easier for you to retain that information and progress much, much quicker. So there are elements that you probably have seen me doing, like chunking. I chunk pieces of information together, and then I add another chunk. And as you can see, we don't do it right away. We continue to train, and then we continue to repeat. And that's the other elements that we normally try to incorporate, that space repetition. But then we also try to actively recall that information. We're trying to actively recall that information that I just gave you. It's not only that I'm going to teach you one thing and I'm going to ask you to copy me as you're doing it. That's great in the beginning. But I'm going to ask you at some point to show me how much you can recall. And because of that, you're working also on that aspect of your memory that allows you to bring back the information to your conscious mind. Then obviously, as you heard me talking about a couple of minutes ago, I also make an emphasis, I put an emphasis on stress reduction. Why? Because research has shown that too much stress is actually associated with poor memory formation, meaning it's more difficult for you to create that memory, but it's also, since it's more difficult for you to create that memory, it's more difficult for you to recall that information. So that's one of the reasons why there's a certain level of stress that we maintain, but we do it progressively so you get accustomed to that level of stress so it never reaches that threshold in which it's going to be too much for your brain. So as you can see, because of that, Balintawak teaches you not only how to react under stress or how to be accustomed to that level of stress, but how you do it without panicking.
Quick, boom, quick, boom. That's it.
So there's also an aspect that we have to talk about, and this is the aspect that we cannot overlook, which is the balance. It is extremely important to pay attention to balance and coordination. Now, balance is not only a physical thing that we do. Obviously, we do everything through our muscles, but it's a neurological, it serves as a part of the brain controlling the muscles that are in charge of modulating the way that you move and the way that you compensate for certain movements. So just so you have a quick understanding of where all of this comes from, that comes from a piece of the brain. This is called the cerebellum, also known as the little brain, which sits at the back and base of your brain. In this case, we have two pieces that forms the brain. One is the cerebrum, and then the other piece, which is a smaller one, is going to be the cerebellum. Now, keep in mind that this cerebellum, which is distinctive from the cerebrum, as I said before, is a smaller piece, but is connected to also the cerebrum, and it sends messages and signals that basically what they do is they create micro adjustments to your movement. So let's say, for example, that you're being pushed off center or you're falling. That idea or that aspect of moving and detecting the movement and moving and quickly and opening your stance so you can, save for yourself from a fall is partly involving the cerebellum. Now, in Balintawak, obviously, you're constantly challenging your balance. Think about, for example, from the static position, this position that we were talking about before, abierta. So you can see this position is not, some of you were kind of experiencing that idea of like almost falling, and that is because you have to leave width and depth. So when you leave enough width and depth, this becomes easier. You can move without losing your balance. But in the beginning, if you don't leave too much width and then you do this, you're going to notice you're going to fall. So that idea of having to calibrate your body to detect how much width and how much depth you have to give to your stance is also working partially on being not only conscious, but on that portion of the brain, as I said before, the cerebellum, that is in charge of making those micro adjustments. Now, keep in mind that also it's not a problem of static versus movement. Everything is going to be happening at the same time. Most likely, a person is going to pull you, a person is going to push you, or you yourself is going to be a little bit off center. So any single time that you're there, you have to compensate quickly, and then you have to do it as the person again is pushing you and pulling you. That's working also the cerebellum, which is making those micro adjustments. And why is that so important? Because it trains, again, the cerebellum to react against those variations, and it makes you more aware of not only of your body, but how to compensate, which is enormous for particular people who are a little bit older and they're afraid of falling, because that idea of being able to compensate quickly or adjust your body by moving back and forth is crucial to avoid precisely those falls.
Block it quick.
Here, balak.
So now we're talking about coordination before. We're talking about the coordination in the context of maintaining your balance, and balance and coordination being related. But coordination specifically is that idea of managing one side of the body with the other side of the body, or the upper part of the body with the lower part of the body. So despite that idea of emphasizing the power and the mechanics that we were talking about before, and then speed, there's also a great attention to detail, particularly in the fine motor movement.
Quicker. That's it. Now, here. Boom. It's good.
So think about like the disarms that we were just doing a couple of minutes ago. Think about what it entails, like hooking, as I was teaching before, and how to trap or how to slap pull. That level of manipulation requires, among other things, that the left hand and the right hand are going to be coordinated differently, meaning the left hand and the right hand are going to be doing sometimes even opposite things.
1, 2, 3.
Then the upper body and the lower body are going to move independently, even if all of them share one common thing. Like sometimes, as you were seeing me doing, I slap pull and I lay on top. Obviously, they kind of like talk to each other to create one particular aspect. Like in this case, I want to trap the other person's arm. So I do that with my left hand pulling down and with my right hand being on top. But I need to coordinate them at the same time, or almost simultaneously, so that can happen at the same time. At the end, I want to achieve something, and if I don't learn how to coordinate well my left hand with my right hand, obviously it's going to be almost impossible. So think about, again, all of these elements that's going to be your coordination aspect, and how your brain starts training for coordination, how to coordinate, again, left with the right and upper and lower body, and even that aspect of angle adjustment mid-air. As you can see, sometimes we were changing from one side to the other side, and those adjustments is also part of the coordination. So it's not only coordinating one hand with the other hand, it's not only the upper body with the lower body, it's also that idea of changing sides or changing heights with the stick. That manipulation is part of the coordination that we're working on in Balintawak. So not only that trains your motor skills, but also trains your brain hemisphere communication, meaning the communication between the left side and the right side of your brain. For someone with ADHD, the next aspect, which is the aspect of focus, as I said before, is extremely, extremely important for me. Now, for me, it's a struggle always to try to shift my focus and my attention to the present moment. It's very, very difficult because I have to overcome like all these extra thoughts in my head. But that's something that over time with Balintawak I have been able to achieve much, much, much easier. It comes much more naturally now to reshift my focus. And that is because Balintawak forces you to be present. And keep in mind that the examples that I was just giving you a couple of minutes ago, where I was just hitting you in different directions, because of that sense of urgency, particularly because you are not responding only against one attack, but responding against different type of attacks that are happening one right after the other one. You're forced to be present. You cannot fixate so much on the attacks that just happened. Meaning, we introduced or just showed you a little bit briefly before that aspect of trickery. The trickery is actually out of the ordinary, meaning it's that thing where we just basically break the script and we start doing random things that are not even contained with the random attacks that we had before. We can combine whichever we want. We can add a kick. We can actually trick the person from going to one side, going towards the other side, and then trap the hand at the same time. So as you can see, the different aspects that the feeder, it forces the feeder to be creative, but at the same time, it makes the other person to not rely on just the basics and that's it. The person has to first realize that there are more possibilities that they encountered before, which makes the other person to not just rely on the things that they have been practiced over and over again and get bored and then thinking, okay, I'm done. Like I already know what it is. But since we can literally do whichever we want, that increase in possibilities and probabilities forces the other person to always be constantly paying attention to the new thing. And as you saw me doing, like that tapping on the shoulder are reminders. Keep in mind, we use the shoulder as a substitute for the head. So the intention will be actually to attack the head, but we substitute that by attacking the shoulder. But it's that aspect, as you saw me doing when I was feeding, that I was tapping and immediately attacking. The other person was reacting quickly after being tapped. That idea of having to react to the next thing and not being fixated on the thing that just happened. Yes, I touched your shoulder. Yes, it was supposed to be an attack to the head, but now something else is happening at you, and then you have to shift your focus to the present moment. So as you can see, it forces you to be present.
Now move here this way. This is my job now. Move here this way. Boom. Stomach.
So this is an example again of attention control under increased pressure, because progressively we're adding a little bit more, not only attacks, so different type of attacks, but also more pressure, physically attacking with more strength. And that actually is going to make the other person to have to reshift the focus and being present, as I said before, which is, again, one amazing skill. If anything that we have discussed so far, that's the only thing that you develop. This is an amazing skill to have that you can bring to your everyday life, meaning how to not only not get fixated in one thing, but to be able to react to other things quickly right after. So as you heard me in the closing aspect, as you heard me saying, in Balintawak, we're not only training the physical aspect of it. Obviously, training for speed and reflexes and how to generate power is important, but you're training your brain. You're training your brain to become a little more attentive. You're focusing on the next attack rather than fixating on the attack that just happened. You're also working on your working memory, meaning your capacity to manage different aspects and different inputs at the same time while paying attention to other things. You're focusing also on developing your skills in terms of creativity when you're feeding the other person, and your reaction time, and also how to manage your body, how to control your body and coordinate your body, whether it is one side to the other side or the upper body with the lower body, and also how to find good balance, not only as you remain static, but as you move or as you are moved, which is actually the most important thing. So as you can see, Balintawak is not only a training for the body, it's also training for your brain.